Okay, is everybody in? All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Addison Vincent. I am the gallery manager for Artworks Trenton. We're actually really excited to have this artist talk today. Sutured Resilience is our first in-person live show at Artworks in 17 months. So due to the pandemic, Artworks was shut down for close to a year. So we're extremely excited to be back with our programming and welcome everybody to Artworks again. Today's artist talk will consist of the three artists from Sutured Resilience. It's Jennifer Cabral, Chanika Svetvilas, and Kat Coop. I'm going to be turning this over to our new education and community outreach coordinator, Kenny Bullock. She'll be moderating this artist discussion today. And if you could please just hold all questions until after the artists are through the presentation and are ready to field questions. All right, so Kenny, I will turn it over to you now as moderator. And thanks again, everyone, for being here.
Good afternoon. Happy Saturday, all. I am happy to have you in the space. I'm happy to share space this afternoon. So, few housekeeping rules. Please stay on mute unless you are speaking. We don't want background noise to throw the artist off as they are introducing their pieces. And we also want to give respect to whomever is taking the stage at the time. We would love to share space and see you if you can. If you can't, that is okay. Welcome. We still welcome you. We still want to share space with you. Hold all questions, as Ryan said, until the very end. At the question point, we want to allow the artists to get their points across before we're asking them questions. We don't want to, again, throw them off throughout their presentation. Also, enjoy, embrace one another's company. This is the only time we'll be in this space with these exact people having this exact experience. So take it all in, enjoy, and I hope that we have a great session. I know we'll have a great session today. And so we're gonna get started. The first artist we have will be Jennifer Cabral. Jennifer Cabral is a Brazilian photographer raised in, sorry, we have a few more folks that I'm omitted in. Raised in, Jennifer, can you please pronounce this? I do not want to butcher it.
My town, where I was born,
your town.
São Paulo.
Okay.
São Paulo, Brazil.
Living and working in New Jersey, she received a BFA in photography and one in social communications, respectively from Escola Guinard and PUC Manaus in Brazil. Some participants' publications and awards include the Festival de Fotografia de Tiradentes 2020, Latin American Fotografia 8, the Grief Landscape Stories, Urban Nautica and Haraban Awards Shortlist 2019, and Proyecto Cultural. I apologize, I cannot pronounce the last part of that. Oh, Memento? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. She is a member of National Press Photographer Association. In addition to working as an independent photographer, Cabral devotes her skills to photograph collections from the archives of the Princeton University Library. Cabral is currently a graduate student in the Social Communication Department at Rutgers University, where she is pursuing a degree in information science. So welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Addison and Kenny, for such nice introduction. Well, I want to first thank you, everyone that is here. And I am glad when I don't see a lot of people gathering in a Zoom call on a weekend. So whenever this recording reaches you, I hope it brings not one more way to distract yourself, but to be more present, and that our messages here can be useful whenever it reaches you. So Sutured Resilience is an exhibition that opened at Artworks in Trenton, New Jersey on August 10th, and I will go into September 4th. And I can't believe it's almost only one more week that will be open. I hope everyone here have a chance to stop by. We also created a 3D virtual version of the exhibition. It's not the same, but it's as close as possible to being there. So I invite you to visit the gallery. We will share the link for you so you can see it from wherever you are. I want to also mention that this content is sensitive, so please take good care of yourselves, stop and walk away if you have to, and be well. So I'm gonna try to introduce a few pieces that were in this exhibition. I wish that these topics that I use for these works were outdated, that were part of our past, that we no longer had to deal with a border wall, that we no longer had to deal with division, that we did not need to have deal with huge climate change, in particular the mining issues in my home state of Belo Horizonte, Minas Gerais in Brazil, or that we were no longer in a pandemic. But I initially was a little anxious that my work would be not relevant. Like we will be so tired of talking about a pandemic that no longer we wanted to talk about a wall that divides us. But here we are, 2021, and we are still talking about all these issues more than ever. So Borderline I created during 2017 when we first faced the prospect of having very difficult political issues in the United States in particular that affects obviously everywhere else in the world. And it was about how can someone tell you you don't belong here even though you were born in a land. And this work came to me as much visually as in words. More and more my work has been incorporating words directly over my photographs. I have a background that was very much traditional documentary based, and I was a freelance photographer for local newspapers for many years. And that was my initial foundation in photography. But as time went by, I don't want to say that photography wasn't enough, that the image was not enough, but I felt that it really layered a lot of meaning to incorporate more words to my work. So a lot of my works have recordings and has poetry, it has text over the image, and Borderline is a good example of this. Another thing that I want to mention about this work is that up front, and I think maybe this is true to most of my works, my recent works, that there's always a second meaning to things. And even though it's not obvious up front. And for me, this line is a very personal symbol of my own struggles during a cancer treatment. And I had a surgeon literally drawing a line over my chest. And that's where that line initially came from. It it also, this work was the first one that I wasn't able to carry a camera. I was going through cancer treatment. I was very literally weak. I couldn't hold a camera steady. I didn't have the strength. And I had still like the desperate need to use my photography, continue creating after it, all after that period. So all I could do is go through my archives, which these images of bodies was a model at Escola Guinar 20 years ago that I photographed. And the silver gelatin prints were framed. And this poem just came to me very powerfully. And within minutes, I drew this line, I got a Sharpie and wrote US border, and that became the work. So I'm going to read quickly one part of this poem because I think it's just as important as the images. And also that made this poem give strength to all of us through all that is we're still facing, okay? We are a vast territory you will never own. You don't course through us, we course through you. Hear our voice, sound travels over you. Our birthplace has been written. We are living documents. We have our own identity, so don't tell us what we are not. Beware of where you cut us through, because you die when we die. So that's Borderline. And you can go to my website and I'll share a link. And I also created little GIF files that this poem kind of floats over the images. I also really try to create works that are very shareable online. They always have either recordings or the downloads. And so a lot of my work, I try to, it's like a gift. Like I want to share and make it as shareable as possible. So Chanika, you can go to the next slide. So Mineira is a work that I was very anxious about sharing because it was very, very personal. These are photographs of my childhood, and in Belo Horizonte, Brazil, in the state of Minas Gerais. This particular image is from the soccer stadium in the background, and it's a very symbolic, cultural, and a place that is very loved by all the residents from Belo Horizonte. And I was struggling in 2019, like many people in my state and especially in the capital, Belo Horizonte, about the disaster that happened with the mining industry. It was a collapse that is ongoing. It has not stopped. It's another subject that I wish I didn't have to talk about years later, but it's more, relevant than ever. The president of Brazil today is saying that there's no water to run the hydroelectrics in the country. And if you think about a Brazil without water, the Brazil that I grew up in, it's unimaginable. But here we are, climate change is real. So Belo Horizonte is a town that lives off mining. And the realization that your survival, your economic survival, all the schools, all the industry, commerce depend on the mining industry, but it's an industry that is destroying the mountains around you. It was a very harsh realization. So I used a mountain that hangs over the whole town, and it was elected the symbol of the town, called Serra do Curral del Rei. And I literally went to Google Maps and traced the mountain. So I tried to envision where on my photographs from my childhood, the positions I was in relation to the mountain in my mind, in my memories. So if I was in this place, where would the mountain be? Was it in my right? Was it in my left? Was it in the back? Was it in the front? And I started playing with the layer of negative and positive over these images. And in the process, I wanted to point out, like, where exactly was the mind in relationship to the mountain? And when I typed the word, I was totally surprised to have it landed on my body the way it did. And at that moment, I realized, like I mentioned before, that a word can bring a completely different meaning to something. And the mind that was referring to the mining industry became my body, became me claiming my body again. And it discusses about, child abuse, and speaking publicly about it was a very healing process for me, fundamental chapter in my life. So this work is very personal and very dear to me. And I'm very grateful for all the recognition. I got a Latin American Photographer Award in New York in 2019. Various publications around the world published this work, and no other publication was more important to me than the Festival of Photography of Tiradentes. And because I was a work that was is very personal, but I've been out of my country and of Belo Horizonte, my town, for 20 years. And I didn't know if people could relate to it. And being part of that festival in Tiradentes is one of the largest photography festivals in Brazil now. And it was very, very like special to me. And I'm grateful to have been part of that event. I think there's one more photo there. Yes. And so I wanted to know about some people sometimes ask me, so how did you decide to do the negative and positive? First of all, I wanted to protect myself, protect the few children that were around me, and like this, it brings also a universality, protects the identity of those involved, but it brings, like, it could be anyone. And so I think about Mineira, I think I'm done. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about membrane. Membrane is about COVID. It was about the isolation period that we all have to, unfortunately, still do, and be away from our families. And I just wanted to create the 6 feet apart, like visually trying to envision that. So I created this radius of snow, like nobody can touch, nobody can interact. And so, and it also became like a spell of protection that I wanted to put over these photographs of my family. And I just want to mention that also the photography, the analog part of photography is very present in my work. I crave it as much of the work is done digitally. And like when I installed Mineira in the gallery, I did it in a way that I wanted those photographs to look as if it was a strip of negative. So they are like frame after frame, long in an acrylic, no, a strip of negative. And I hope you, I think I'm gonna pass it on to Kat, but I hope you get to see this online or at the gallery, and on my website you can see all the details about all these works. Thank you so much.
Wow, great work, Jennifer. Thank you so much for walking us through your process. I absolutely love your work and I appreciate you being vulnerable with us about your journey. So could we give Jen a round of applause? And if you can't give us a round of applause, we would love to see the reaction. Thank you. Next, I will be introducing Kat Cope. I'm trying to find, there we go. Found her on screen. Okay, Kat Cope is an American artist living and working in the West Coast of Ireland. She is entering her second year as a PhD student in studio art research at Burren College of Art. Cope has exhibited her mixed media work in solo exhibitions at University of Connecticut, Stanford, and University of Massachusetts, Amherst. Group exhibitions include ABC Norio, Hive Art Collective, and Art in Odd Places Festival, among others. Welcome, Kat.
Thanks so much, Kenny, and thank you all for being here. And I'm glad we're recording this because I know some people couldn't make it today, but it's wonderful, those of you who did. And thanks, Jennifer, for leading us in to talking about our work and our exhibition at Artworks Trenton and Sutured Resilience. So this is my website and my Instagram handle, and I'll post that in the chat for people after. But we could go ahead and go to the first work. So when I got to Ireland and Burren College of Art, I was on this new kind of journey, although I had written a project proposal to work on a project making wearable sculpture and actually branching into performance for the first time. So I had been making wearable sculpture for a while. And I was making armor pieces to talk about how, like, as we go through life, we create our own armor as a reaction to our experiences and as a way to move forward and deal with things such as trauma. So I got to Ireland and I was working a lot from my subconscious. I didn't really know quite what I was making, but I was looking at bomb-proof collars, bomb-proof suits. I was looking at specifically the collar, and I thought, okay, this will develop into a full suit of armor eventually, but I'm really interested in these collars. So I started making collars, and then as I was making them, I actually connected the imagery with the blinders that horses wear and that shut out their periphery and keep them from spooking at danger. And I found it really interesting because I actually have a background in riding, and that was one of the things that really helped me as a child to have a sense of calm. And I think I didn't even realize how therapeutic it was for me until I stopped doing it. But yeah, so horses are called bomb-proof when they don't spook or shy away at danger, a perceived danger anymore. So I started making these collars and realizing in the process that they block out the wearer's periphery. So they're both protective, but they're also limiting, and they actually trap the wearer. So this one is drawings that I made of the burren on either side, and then it's paper, but it has wood in the collar and in the internal part of the collar. So we could go to the next slide. So this is another collar that I made So for this one is interesting. Like I've found that photographing them on models has helped me think about ways that I wanted to use them in performance. And since I hadn't done any performance yet, it was helpful to see what they looked like on other people, and also like just posing and positioning, like in the last photo, like gave me ideas for performances and movements and that sort of thing. But in this one, it's I made these little pillows of paper, and then I kind of squashed them down and sutured them together. So there's all this sewing and they're drawing, and it's a lot of layers. But yeah, so it's interesting because to me, the collars, I had originally intended to make like a full suit of armor, and still am planning moving forward in my performances and in my work to make the armor. But the collars are what came out of this experimentation. So my primary mediums are, like I said, I'm starting to branch into performance, but paper has been really important to me, and my MFA is in printmaking. So like I realized when I was doing my MFA that I didn't want to be like making flat layers as much. Like there's something about that, like the tactile nature of layering and adding and subtracting, and that like I connect to like the visceral. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so for this piece, it's like I haven't actually done a performance with it yet. That first collar I showed, I did a performance with, which I'll show in a minute. But this one, it's kozo fiber, which is the inner bark of a mulberry tree that I cooked and then pulled apart to make what's called kozo lace. And then I layered it with kozo paper that I processed by beating it by hand and then blending it to make a pulp. So the blindfold on her face is this kozo lace with wire, and then the kozo paper collaged on top. And my intention is to do a performance that's based on a childhood memory. And all my work comes from my lived experience and how trauma in early childhood, which started with the loss of my father, has contributed to my mental and physical health as an adult. And this is something that like I want to highlight in my work because I know it's an important topic, and it's something that a lot of people are realizing, especially now with the pandemic, that like unresolved trauma can cause lingering, mental and physical health concerns. And for me, it's been really interesting to make this work because I feel like using my lived experience as a case study is helping me in a way to process the things that I went through. And we'll see what happens because I have 3 more years to work on this one project. So it's going to evolve quite a lot. But you can see on the garment that she's wearing, which I'll show full in the next slide, there's some writing, and it said, cut it out, suck it up, which is the title of the performance that I did. So this is from a memory, from a childhood memory. And I don't really know exactly what the performance is going to be, so it's a little bit hard to talk about it, but it's sort of, the concept behind it is that it'll be about learning about danger, sort of like when a child first learns about like danger. And so I'll see how it evolves, and hopefully you can stick with me. And you know, over the next 6 months, there'll be a performance to go with this piece. But it's made out of abaca paper, which is a paper I really like. It can be made quite thin and strong, similar to Koza, which also can be made very thin. And I always like to use paper in my work because I actually connect layers of paper to layers of skin. It's both vulnerable, but can be made really, really strong. So it's something that I use a lot. And all of the work in the show is made of paper. Whether I go in with other mediums and I'm drawing or painting on it or using printmaking, or in this case, just leaving it more raw, although I did seal it with a varnish. And then it's all stitched together with hair, connecting to DNA, you know, the idea that, you know, we're all connected in that way. So next slide, I guess. So we're going to just play a little bit of my performance and then I'll talk about it. So for this performance, I'm chanting the whole time, cut it out, suck it up, cut it out, suck it up, as I'm pulling the strip out of what looks like my mouth, but is actually the collar or helmet. The strip actually says on it, cut it out, suck it up. So it's repeated on the strip. And then I cross out. So then I cross out the words cut it and suck it to leave up and out, which I read as like positive and healing words. So at the end, I take the strip, I fold it back up, and I put it back into the collar, and I chant up, out, up, out, or out, up, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, for me, like actually it was quite cathartic to make this piece. And it was actually my first performance that I've done. But yeah, I just so here is where I'm crossing out the words, and I used a white pen. And then this was that collar or helmet that's in the first image, which originally actually I thought was going to, this is like interesting because I work from my subconscious a lot, and like I'm just making, and I don't really have an idea of like, okay, it's going to look like this. But this was actually going to sit upside down. So the part that's the top was going to be on the neck, and then it was going to stick up like, so I find it exciting to listen to the process. And that's something I think I learned as a printmaker, because so much is left to chance in printmaking. And I think like that experimentation really gave me the ability to like let go in my work and just like let the work communicate with me while I'm making it. So we can actually go to the next slide. Okay. So this is a shot of the site-specific installation I did for the show at Artworks, and the photo was taken by lovely Jennifer. So grateful to her for that. But I wanted to recreate the set of the video performance, because I'm interested in the way that sculptural remnants can like act as like a history, and then also the viewer can, you know, bring their experience to these objects, because like some objects do have a common history. For example, like pillows are frequently associated with comfort, but then in this case, there's this paper pillowcase and it's torn and it's wounded. And then the paper that I've made on the walls that I wanted, or I was thinking about, like my bedroom in childhood, and I didn't want it to feel like an actual bedroom, and I wanted it to feel like almost like a foggy memory that had deteriorated and like been recreated. So there's holes and there's tears in the paper. Their pieces are incomplete or they're not quite whole. And then there's an element in them, if you could go to the next slide, called Paper Maker's Tears, which are hard to see in a video, but it's just like when the person making the paper drips water on it before it's transferred or cooched off onto a surface. So it gives it this the sense that it's been cried on almost. And then again, I just repeated the words, cut it out, suck it up, and in inclusions in the paper. So let me just think if there's any last things I wanted to say about the work. So in the exhibition, actually, you saw the work, the collars on photographed models, but in the exhibition, if you haven't seen it yet, I actually installed it suspended. So it's hanging from the ceiling. And I did this because I wanted people to feel like they could be the wearer. So I'm like curious to get feedback, and I'm always like really interested in what people, feel when they view the work, because like that's, a really important part of my process. So if you've been to the show, let me know what you think, and I'll pass it on to Chanika then.
Awesome work, Kat. Thank you so much for sharing your process. I always love hearing processes, and I always love hearing meanings behind pieces. And it just made your installation that much more special. So thank you so much for being vulnerable with us in this space. And also, can we give Kat a round of applause? Thank you so much, Kat. And so next we'll have Chanika. I have to find Chanika on the screen. Great. So, Chanika Svetvilas has presented her interdisciplinary work at disability studies conferences and exhibited at the Denver International Airport, Jamaica Center for Arts and Learning, ABC Norio, Brooklyn Public Library, Westbeth Gallery, iSlip Art Museum, Asian Arts Initiative, and Wexner Center for the Arts, among others. Her work is published in Studying Disability Arts and Culture, an introduction by Petra Coopers, and she will be presenting at the 3rd International Conference on Disability Studies, Arts and Education, DSAE, this fall. She is also the co-founder of Tie Links, a collective that was based in New York City. She holds an MFA in Interdisciplinary Arts from Goddard College. Svetvilas resides in Princeton Junction, New Jersey, and her studio is located at Art Station in Heightstown, New Jersey. And so I'm passing it off to Chanika.
Thank you so much, Kenny, and thank you everyone for being here in this space with us, especially on a Saturday. And feel free to share this recording with others who have not been able to attend. I am going to share first a series of drawings called What I Have Learned. And these drawings are done on lined paper. You can probably see the lines there. The paper was sourced through Craigslist. There was a woman who was offering the paper for free, and it was originally belonged to an elementary school, so it was used to teach penmanship. And the paper is 36 inches high and 24 inches wide. And I collected this paper during the pandemic. At the start of the pandemic, stores were closed and because we were under lockdown, but I was able to source this paper through Craigslist. And knowing that the origin was a school, it started me to just think about what are the ways we learn? How do we receive information? What are we told? And how does that compare to what we experience? And also, do we question the source of our information? And do we have to unlearn also what we learn? And because this paper is used for penmanship, the first drawings I started to do initially were with text. And there were just certain thoughts that came to mind when I was thinking of the text. Oops, sorry, that's my yoga. Sorry. So one of the concepts that I thought about sharing was this experience of being with a psychiatrist as someone who has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So I self-identify as having an invisible disability. And when I was hospitalized, I thought it was very strange that I would have this whole team of people that I would be put in the room with. So there would be a psychiatrist, a social worker, a nurse, graduate students. And I felt very strange because here I was with this team of people and I was supposed to share my experience, yet I didn't know them. I didn't know who they were as people. So it's a very strange sort of relationship. And so I just asked my psychiatrist in the moment what his favorite color was, because I thought, what is a way to get to know someone? And it just popped into my mind. And the first thing he said was, how is that relevant? And I thought that was very odd because I think, you know, when you want to get to know someone, you want to, you know, get to know their likes and dislikes. You want to create a relationship. And so for me, it's about what is that lived experience of forming that relationship, and how do you create a relationship that isn't just informed by a medical model of disability. This is another text drawing. It says, I drew my self-portrait on a white sheet of paper. The student next to me said, but you're not white. And this was then when I was in elementary school. I can't remember what grade it was, but it's a memory that sticks out in my mind. That here I was drawing a self-portrait in an art class in school with everyone else. And this girl next to me who's white points this out to me. And it was in that moment that I suddenly, you know, difference was pointed out to me. And this moment reminds me of how children are first exposed to racism in school. Well, I wouldn't say first, but one of the first experiences. It's definitely not the first necessarily, but it's that exposure because of how kids and adults are reacting to you. And I also remember being teased as, you know, as someone who is Asian American in school. So I wanted to share this experience because also I understand that this isn't unique to me, that other people have experienced racism and being othered by someone else. This is a bipolar neuron. Oh, I forgot to mention that the other drawings were charcoal. So this is charcoal and collage on lined paper. And it's a bipolar neuron. And I started looking at textbooks, again, looking at how information is shared and how is it sourced. And I was looking at a neurology textbook, and I saw that there are neurons that are also bipolar. So I thought that was interesting as someone who has a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. And bipolar neurons are used in the transmission of the senses. So I thought that was interesting. So your 5 senses are transmitted through bipolar neurons. And so the dendrites come up the top and connect to other neurons. And the collage in the center of this neuron cell is actually from a shark jaws. And when I saw it, I just immediately wanted to collage it because I wanted to create this emotion And then I collage this figure on top with this sickle. And so I wanted to create this relationship of vulnerability, strength, and also this idea of potential danger. But to create this tension, because you don't really know who's actually the one in danger, because the bipolar neuron also is just as vulnerable. And, so it's a play with scale. And this is also a bipolar neuron. And it's spray paint, charcoal, and collage, and it's called In Between. And again, there's this knife, this idea of finding some kind of strength and defense. I originally was thinking, when I decided to use the spray paint, of also protests were happening around Black Lives Matter. And as also being an Asian American, also attending these marches for Black Lives Matter and in solidarity, but also recognizing as someone in color that at that time, although now there is more awareness, there wasn't as much awareness about the anti-Asian violence that was happening against Asian Americans. And this is sort of like a series within a series. So I drew my mouth, and I always thought it's more interesting that I have my crooked teeth here. And I was very aware that mouths were being disguised behind masks, which also prevents people from lip reading for people that need that accommodation, and also the inability to also see people's expressions under their masks. And also at the same time, this idea of raising our voices in protests, especially during the pandemic with all the protests happening. And in this drawing, it's taken from a textbook about a psychiatric textbook, and it's the definition of bipolar disorder. And so this idea, this tension of almost being stuffed in the mouth with this definition, and wanting to sort of express this idea of trying to move beyond it, and having my voice heard. This was a drawing I did during a lot of the anti-Asian violence protests. And the figure inside the mouth is of a yak. And a yak is a guardian figure in Thai culture that are, they're made to look almost scary, because the idea is that they're supposed to scare off any malevolent spirits. And it's a form of protection. So I was thinking, how do I conjure up something that's protective against all this anti-Asian violence, as I was hearing friends being impacted and feeling the need to buy pepper spray. And my sister in California, when the lockdown lifted, she wanted to get a haircut, but she lives in Berkeley, and she was afraid of actually leaving because of a lot of the anti-Asian violence that was happening nearby her. So I wanted to do something in my drawings that sort of would conjure up strength. So the video I'm going to show is of this 3-tiered sculpture that is in Artworks. It's called Pharma Go Round. So I'm just going to play it. So it's almost 6 feet tall with a chandelier. And it's made with prescription bottles. And I once took the wrong medication in the wrong dose because the bottles were exactly alike and the medication almost looked the same. And then I started thinking about how prescription bottles are so generic looking and they don't convey the contents, the expense, or the side effects you might experience, or the variety. And so I started using the prescription bottles for sculpture. And so I melt them with a heat gun. And then with some of them, I started adding bling. So like these craft gems, wanting to highlight some of the distortions. And also to reflect this Japanese art form called kintsugi, which means that you apply some kind of gold or to the fracture in, like if it's ceramics, the fractures are, to repair it. So rather than hiding the repair, you highlight it and you embrace it. And the repair just becomes part of the history of the object. And I like this idea because of just thinking as someone who self-identifies with having this disability, that that my disability, my invisible disability, is just a part of my history. It is something that I embrace, and it's not something that I see as something that's wrong or something that needs to be healed. It's just it's just a part of me. And I don't know if you can see, but underneath also is an orange mirrored underneath the second tier. And I use orange a lot as a way to signify stigma and also to reflect the amber color prescription bottles. And then that's actually hair that you see streaming down the center prescription bottle in the spiral. And it was because I wanted to include myself in the sculpture. And on the top of the third tier is a prescription bottle with two sort of doll hands. And that was to sort of convey the stigma. You have these gold nails that protrude out of the prescription bottle. And I really wanted to use these gold chains and this gold embellishment to signify the pharma industry and its exorbitant costs and inaccessibility. The hair prescription bottle sculpture ends with a temple bell, and temple bells also are meant to call to prayer, but also to ward off any bad spirits. So that's the end of my talk. Welcome any questions. I'm going to stop screen share. And I apologize for having some, oh, actually, I forgot. Before we go, I just wanted to mention that there are some upcoming events. There's a closing event of Sutured Resilience, which is Saturday, September 4th from 1 to 3 p.m. Kat, Jen, and I will not necessarily be physically there, but we will be creating a soundscape that will include audience participation. So we welcome your presence, and we can talk more about that if you're interested. I also want to mention that I juried this upcoming exhibition, which is opening, that also focuses on mental health and well-being. It's called Wellbeing Ourselves, Reflect, Reimagine, Connect, and it opens Sunday, September 12th from 4 to 6 p.m. And you can check out the West Windsor Arts Council's website for more information. And finally, there's a call for submissions. This is an exhibit that I curate annually at Princeton University. It's called Unique Minds, Creative Voices. And you can find more information on the website, mentalhealth.princeton.edu. The deadline for submissions will probably be October 30th. And you can email me for more information. And then lastly, please share your experience with Sutured Resilience on Instagram using the hashtag Sutured Resilience. Please let your friends and family and colleagues know about the show. Please visit Artworks or visit the online exhibit. There's definitely social distancing and mask wearing in the gallery, so you'll be safe if you visit. And we also have some resources that we can share with you, and the link is there as well. And thank you for your patience with the screen sharing. I know I made a few mistakes there. I'm still getting used to navigating Zoom. So thank you for your patience, and thank you all for being here. So I'm going to stop the share now.
All right. So thank you so much, Chanika, for sharing. And I loved getting to tap into your pieces, but also your experience as a being and how you are shaping how you're viewed, your identity. You are empowering yourself, and I actually love that about your work. Beautiful, beautiful work. And thank you for sharing your testimony, definitely. So I'm going to bring all the artists on screen now. And can we give another round of applause for their vulnerability, their excellence, their empowering stories? And I think it's time to take on some questions from the audience, questions and comments. You can use the chat, or you can use the raise hand function, and we will call on you to take questions.
Or comments, questions or comments.
Well, I do have a question, but first and foremost, I want to thank all three of you for your exhibition at Artworks. It's absolutely stunning. And anybody here that has not had a chance to, physically come in to see this exhibition, plan for at least 2 hours in the gallery so you can really take everything in. It is interactive, which thank you again. That was fantastic. All three of you make it interactive. I've actually spent quite a few days now going through the gallery and really taking it all in, and it's just an absolutely wonderful show. I also want to thank you all for being so intimate in your sharing with us. A lot of times people don't get to see, us as artists and what we do and how we react to our lived experiences, which leads me to my question, which is, do you find that creating art, based on your lived experiences is in itself therapeutic? And this question is for all three of you. So if you'd like to each kind of answer that.
I'll start. No, like creating it for me was painful. I only get healing from the sharing. When I share, I do get healing, but the process of creating art is painful for me personally. So artist therapy, I know each person comes from a different door and a different direction. For me, it's complex. Yeah, I'll pass it on.
Jen, I can really appreciate that. Yeah, I don't know if I can say it's therapeutic. I mean, when I'm in my art process, it's just my process. I do feel the drive to create the work because I have something to say, and I want to share it. I want to communicate it, and I do want to give the opportunity for others to feel that they have a space to share and embrace their own experience. And so I have found that people have approached me and talked about their own experiences because they felt comfortable to do so. And part of my interest in sharing the type of work I do is to help break stigma, to for people to realize that these experiences are just part of lived experience, and it's not abnormal. It's just my experience. And I think we all can relate to one's lived experience or my lived experience, in particular in relationship to mental health difference, because we have all experienced a fluctuation, a spectrum of being, because how can you not? I mean, whether it's tragedy you hear on the news, or losing a loved one, or sharing grief, especially during this pandemic, sharing so much loss, like losing your job, or people being in the hospital. I mean, we've been through so much. I think especially now it's so important to share experiences. And so I hope, I agree with Jen that it's the sharing that can be healing, because it is a way for us to be aware that we're all interconnected and interdependent. So, yeah.
I feel similar to Chanika and Jennifer. Like I was saying with the performance in the video, the action of creating that for me actually did end up being cathartic. But oftentimes, like for example, when I was writing Cut It Out, Suck It Up on the folded strips of paper, and I didn't know what they were going to be at that, it was so incredibly painful, like that process. So like I do find similarity, like to what Jennifer said, where like actually making the work is quite difficult, but I do find solace in sharing it with other people and relating, to their experience, and hearing, like Chanika was saying, how the work can help other people to share their experience, or at least know that they're not alone in their experience. So I think it's quite similar for me as well.
I'm just going to add one little thing, that when you do have a healing part of creating the work, because I believe you cannot heal anything that you cannot see. And when you create, you are able to see things that you did not realize. And in that sense, it is healing. But I think I just get always so overwhelmed by the healing that comes from the sharing that I kind of forget about that part. So that's it.
Sorry, thank you all for sharing. Thank you, Addison, for your question. We have two comments and one question. So Anne Marie Miller says, we'll visit, need to see the breadth and depth. Thank you all for the insight. That will certainly help in the gallery experience. Tribal says, it was very interesting to hear from all the artists after having seen the show in the gallery and online. Thank you, Hara. And then Ryan has a question. So it says, thank you for the incredible presentations. What advice would you give to students and artists about embracing vulnerability within their work and by extension in a public space? So,
is it okay if I go first? I think it's really about what you're comfortable with at the moment. And I think it's like everybody else, we all have different levels that we're at, and like what we can tolerate, and like how we can share our vulnerability. So I think, for example, there are things that I'm starting to share now that I wouldn't have shared 5 or 10 years ago. And I just think, taking time, sitting with yourself, knowing what you're comfortable with, and then listening to those emotions in the body, because I think right now in society, there's a huge disconnect from our bodies and our brains. And that's one thing I'm so grateful for, is learning that, like, when I get that reaction in my gut that says I'm uncomfortable, it's okay to listen to it. It's okay to say, okay, I'm uncomfortable. Like, that means something. But yeah, I would just say, listen to yourself.
Yes, I agree. I think it's an individual choice, and you should do what is safe for you. For me, everything came in stages. It wasn't till I had my last bipolar manic episode and was hospitalized that I finally came to terms with my health and maintenance of my well-being, that I finally confronted it in my art practice. And even when I did that, it was, as I said, in stages in terms of what I felt comfortable sharing. For example, I use charcoal in my drawings. And one of the things I forgot to mention was I started using charcoal because when I was 25, I had swallowed an overdose of sleeping pills in a suicide attempt. And I remember waking up and spewing charcoal, because activated charcoal is used to absorb chemicals in the body. So, and I only, shared that part recently. I was also really aware about, what it meant to be public, to disclose, especially someone who self-identifies with having a mental health difference, because there is so much stigma. I mean, I thought about, how is this going to affect my job prospects? How will this affect how people view me and my abilities? And I have experienced discrimination before for my mental health difference. And it is difficult to ask for accommodations. So it definitely has to be an individual choice. And I think, everyone's journey is different, but I did get to a point where I felt like if I didn't just let go and create what I felt I needed to create, I'd be stifling myself. So I felt like I really got to a point where I needed to let go, because otherwise I'd be denying a part of myself. So I think it's important to just be true to yourself and do what is safe for you.
Thank you. Listening to your stories, I don't know how much more I can add, but like the vulnerability it wasn't the theme. I think a mistake is to try to start from that vulnerable place. And personally, for my work, the vulnerable place is at the end of the work. I start talking about something, and at the end, what shows up, it's me, and everything is transparent about my experience and my struggles. So the vulnerability is a consequence, not the starting point. And again, just think about what you want to share. What do you want to say? That should be your focus. What is your voice? How would you express yourself? And don't think about, how vulnerable that can make you, because I think the more that all of us do this process, we can be naked in front of each other and get to know each other and relate to each other. The more of us that does this process without trying to, I can't talk about that, or can't say this, or can't show this. This part is not to be mentioned. We just have to create the courage to do that.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Or comments from the audience? I have a question. So what would you all say was the most rewarding part of this experience of the creating, both in of the presenting, whether it be right here, right now, or your opening night in the gallery?
I'll start. Meeting these two, like you really, it was an amazing experience. We did not know each other, not even briefly, let alone deeply, as I think we do now. And creating, being given the space, and Addison, I bow to you and thank you for literally saying, do whatever you want, I'll make it happen. That is a gift that so many artists don't have. So we had many elements that it was the connection that we were able to create between the three of us, and then the support that you, Kenny, and Addison and Artworks gave to us, that I think created a powerful show. I have to say, I don't have, I'm not going to be shy about it. I am absolutely amazed by what we created together, and thank you for everyone involved.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everyone this was created during the pandemic. So our proposal was accepted in January, but we submitted it in June 2020, and then accepted in January 2021. And Kat was in Ireland, and even though Jen was in New Jersey as well, because of the pandemic, we kept each other separate. So we had monthly Zoom calls, and that was our process. And I mean, the whole process was rewarding for me to make these connections and to deepen them. I had met both Kat and Jen in different exhibits. We exhibited together, and it was great to see how we could work together and to collaborate on the proposal and the installation. And I also thank Addison for his wizardry to help us be able to make our vision a reality, because we didn't know how things would look in the gallery. I mean, everything we did was in communication, was online. And when we first were that first week of installing, that's when Kat and Jen first met each other. And for me, I create my work in a studio at ArtStation in Hightstown, and it's a narrow space. So, and I have one drawing that's 4 feet high and 18 feet wide, which is hard to photograph, which is why I didn't share it in this artist talk. But it, I worked on it on 3 walls, and it was rewarding to actually see it being able to be displayed on a continuous wall the way I wanted it to be viewed. And also that Pharma Go Round sculpture was the first time I assembled it, was in Artworks. So the work is, I mean, we have an online gallery for those who are not able to visit Artworks, but it really is meant to be seen in person, because you don't have a sense of the scale unless you visit the gallery. So I really encourage you to have that experience. And yes, it was definitely rewarding to hear people's comments, because you don't know when you're working in your studio how people experience it. So it was wonderful to hear people's comments. And I hope everyone who's been out to experience it can continue to share it. We will have our online gallery up for a few more months past the September closing date. So that is one way you can continue to share it. So I hope you do. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say, like, similarly to Chanika and Jen, I didn't quite, like, we had this amazing connection, like, of supporting each other through the pandemic, like over these Zoom calls. But, you know, we were talking every month and trying to, like, conceptualize what the show would be. And you can't really sense that until you get into the gallery and all the work is together. And yeah, and then meeting Jennifer, like, for the first time in person, was like such an amazing experience. And seeing Chanika again, because we met before in person, but, like, you know, it was yeah, a few times. And so we'd, like, developed this friendship, like, virtually, like, over time, and then, you know, just feeling that closeness to each other. And I was saying at the opening that I felt like sometimes when you're putting this kind of work out on your own, or, like, you have the solo exhibition, or you're having to, you know, give an artist talk on your own, I don't know, I didn't feel quite whole sometimes in the coming together and doing this exhibition. I feel like, you know, I feel like that support made me feel like I was whole. And yeah, thank you so much, Kenny and Addison, because I brought my work over in 2 suitcases and I'm thinking, oh, I don't have enough work. But once it was in the gallery, and Addison made, you know, the little installation room for me, and I was able to do the site-specific installation, and then the work was suspended through the gallery, and it gave this, you know, flow where our work in the space really, like, leads you through the space. I think that, to me, also just seeing that, and then doing this programming, you know, together with the 2 of you, and then, you know, with Kenny, and it's been an amazing experience. Yeah, so thank you so much.
You know, I'd like to just add my own personal thank you to all 3 of you. You know, I do quite a few shows a year and installing exhibitions. This one was fun, and it was fun for many reasons. One being the fact that I actually missed it. It had been literally 16 months since I've installed a show. So putting a show of this scope together was a joy for me. I don't do this job for just any old reason. I do it because I enjoy, just as much as I enjoy my own personal art practice, I enjoy putting shows together. I feel like it's an art in itself to put shows together. And you gave me the materials to put together this fantastic exhibition. So thank you. Thank you, all 3 of you, for creating this beautiful, beautiful art. And, you know, I knew that you had all been meeting virtually to put this together. I didn't realize the scope of the fact that, I mean, for the most part, you were 3 strangers that came together to pull together these works that speak so beautifully to each other. That, you know, when we installed the exhibition, just seeing the works flow together, you know, you have your own spaces within the gallery, but those works kind of meld together. And it was kind of the vision that I had prior to doing the installation, but to actually see it really come together like that, I can't thank you guys enough for you know, thinking of even showing at artworks. And I'm so glad that after going through your proposals, or your proposal, that you know, give myself some kudos, that I had selected the show, because, you know, I when I put together yearly schedules, I try to have each show flow into the next, into the next, into the next. And you kind of, when I read your proposal, it just fit right into the vision that I had for this prior year. With everything going on since 2017, one of my main focal points in the gallery was not only to show women, female artists, which I thought was extremely important, but also women of color. And my entire schedule for the last year and a half, well, really 2 years, because I planned about 14 months out. I had this idea and this focal point, and I didn't have any proposals to really fill what my vision was for the year. And then after working with the prior two artists, 3 artists that we had showed in the gallery, with the pandemic in the middle of all this, I was sitting on your proposal because I was like, I need to make sure that I'm not just putting this show together in the middle of a pandemic that nobody's going to be able to come to see. And fortunately, this time frame worked out. I mean, granted, we are still dealing with the pandemic, but at least people can come out and actually see these works in person. So that this was one of this was a feather in my cap, this show, my own personal cap. And I'm so grateful to all 3 of you for sending me that proposal and really seeing this show come together. It's such a wonderful show, and everybody I talk to, I keep telling them, you have to come to our works, you have to see this show. And everybody that has come through, especially this past week, we've had a few large groups that came in unexpectedly to come see the show. And I have to tell you that they were emotionally charged by the show. Your works are powerful. They really, really touch people. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Addison. That means a lot.
No, you're welcome.
I actually have a follow-up question for Jen and Kat. So not only did this project come together during a pandemic, but it was 3 women artists, and it was something that we conceived together. Like, it wasn't, a separate person that was curating, we were doing it ourselves. And I was wondering how this experience compares to other exhibition opportunities that you have, and if you could just talk a little bit about that.
I'll start. I was overwhelmed, because being part of a group show, someone else is doing everything. And not saying that Artworks wasn't there for us all the way, but we had to put together the programming and make sure that the works would talk to each other. And those decisions usually are delegated to someone else in my past experiences. So I am, first of all, so grateful to you, Chanika, for seeing what I didn't know, like how our works would be so supportive of each other and come together. So that is a vision that you had, that I'm very grateful. But it was a very empowering experience to be able to create exactly what we wanted. There was not a team that we had to fit. How many photo exhibitions or group exhibitions, it was like, oh, the work has to be this dimension and only that size or only that medium, or we could do whatever we wanted. It was really a blessing, like a dream come true to an artist, and magnified that in the middle of a pandemic where nobody has access to space. Nobody has, even the emotional structure to create work, right? So yeah, that was really, really very different, unique experience for me.
Yeah, similarly, I found, a bit overwhelmed. I've done a few like solo exhibitions where I was putting everything together myself, but like this was so different and really exciting. I guess like when I have done those types of shows, like it was almost like I gave myself like permission to be like a little bit here or there, like not really like consider all the details. And it was like such an amazing thing to work with both of you, and especially when Chanika said like, oh, would you be interested in, you know, working on a proposal? Like, I know this other artist. I was like, yeah, that sounds amazing. Because I'd never done a show with like just other female artists like in this way. And so yeah, it was strange, you know, being separated at the time and then figuring out all the working parts while we were making work, because we came together and the proposal was submitted and we submitted images, and some of that, you know, I mean, it's for me like that, none of that work that I submitted was in the show. So like it was all coming together in the last year. So it's been interesting to be talking to each other and sharing with each other our process like over the time. I've never had anything like that. I've never had something that was in planning for this long, except for this one solo show that I did, but it was like I didn't have anybody really like that who was like helping me through it, and like to have that experience of like, you know, support, which is incredible from both Chanika and Jennifer and our works. So it's really cool.
Yeah, for me, it meant a lot to be able to conceive this exhibition, co-create it with both of you, Jen and Kat, and also that Addison was flexible because the images we submitted are very different from what came out. To add that flexibility, and there are some spaces where, you know, whatever you submit, you have to include, and I really appreciate having that flexibility that as our work grew and changed and evolved, and through our conversations, and for me, even what I shared on Instagram and getting feedback, it was nice to have that flexibility that we didn't have to be boxed in, and I did want to create a show that I wanted to see myself. So it was amazing to really have that opportunity to make that vision a reality, and to be able to share this work that I wanted everyone to have the opportunity to see. And yeah, I mean, art spaces can be very ableist. And so I thought it was really important that we create a supportive environment for ourselves, that we do have those check-ins, and that the process is supportive, that it's not just about producing in the product. A lot of times there's always an emphasis on the product, and art is really about the process. And I always find that the art is that period between the idea and the making, and the sharing is the product, what people also share. So yeah, so it's sad that the show's going to have to come down, because it's been such an amazing experience. And thanks again to Kenny and Addison and Lauren and all the staff at our works, and the volunteers too. I really want to thank the volunteers too.
Thank you all for that. Do we have any more questions in the space? Any more comments in the space? Debbie, do you have a question?
Hello there. I want to thank all of you for your incredible work, and I really wish that the show is able to travel. I'm speaking to you from Arizona. I'm an art teacher, I'm an art teacher for almost 25 years. And I am going to tell you that I have made it a priority to make sure that any oppressed group is always the artist I feature when I teach K-8 in a public school here in Arizona. I'm going to tell you that this arrived in the mail yesterday, NAEA, and I swiftly got an email from the director of Arts Ed telling us, now let's remember, we're not going to utilize that as a basis of curriculum. So it's a rather tenuous line and a lot of eggshells that we step on here, but your work is incredibly important. And I want to encourage all of you. I wish I could be there to see the show in person. I wish I could walk through the space and feel that visceral reaction, because seeing it is magnificent. But I want to be there, and I cannot right now, but I want to encourage you to consider taking this proposal. Addison, this is your job. You need to, like, you know, kind of get it on the road. And I think that it would be welcomed. I think that especially in a state like the one I'm in, that is changing its color, would really be so receptive. And so I encourage you to make connections, Phoenix Art Museum, and even the local galleries. I really think that this would be very much welcomed if that's a possibility. There's a very important show at the Phoenix Art Museum right now called The Violet Protest. And there's a connection in there as well with some of the political elements to your show. But to each of you, I just want to say the work is brilliant. And I really enjoyed being able to listen. Chanika, my connection when you were talking about the mask, I have to tell you that there's like a silent laughter that's happening inside of me, because sometimes I'm incredibly grateful that no one can see the expressions on my face when that mask is on and I'm in my room and I'm the only one wearing the mask. But each of you has taken such personal elements and you have pushed them to the forefront in a way that needs platform. I hope that I really hope that the show makes its way to the other side of the country. So you are to be commended. Excellent. Jen, my heart looking at those photos, oh my gosh, because I remember receiving pictures as a little girl of family. And Kat, that was kind of remarkable, watching you sit there and scratch out words. And I can only imagine what that felt like, being embedded in like that helmet. So I really connected with the show. I think you did an outstanding job. And I wish it many, many, many hours of traveling and accessibility. So you did great. Thank you for giving the talk and letting me speak. Great job, Addison.
Thank you so much. Chanika, you're on mute. Chanika, you're on
Oh,
mute.
sorry. I was just saying thank you to Debbie. We really appreciate your comments. And if anyone would like to take it on the road, we definitely welcome that opportunity.
I'm going to share it. I'm going to share it.
Thank you so much.
I'm not really that tech savvy, but I've learned how in the last year, God knows. So I'm going to do the best I can. But I would love to see it travel this way.
Thank you, dear Debbie. Thank you.
Oh,
That's beautiful.
it's incredible.
We have room for maybe 2 to 3 more questions and then we'll wrap up.
I have a question for Jen and Kat. Were there any surprises when you finally saw the work together, and like any overlaps or how the work responded to each other?
I guess like since we'd been in communication so much, the only thing that was like a big surprise to me and an excitement to me was to see like the scale of pieces together, like your drawing, your 18-foot drawing, and like with Jen's pieces, like all of them, like how they were installed, because like I guess that was something that, you know, I just didn't know because we'd only really talked about it or seen photographs and that sort of thing. And I'm sure maybe that's how you felt with mine as well, because like I was able to test the installation a little bit before I left in another exhibition that nobody could come to because of the pandemic. So it was only installed but never open. So I had a sense of what my work was gonna do in the space, but yeah, I thought for a minute that there would be too much work, but then, you know, the gallery is so airy and big that it ended up being absolutely perfect. So it's good. I thought I wouldn't have enough to do.
Like in your work fills the space with the sound and the floating pieces. Is like, how could it not be enough? It's like I think it just surprised me how one work leads to the next, like, and there's always a connection point. There was always a reference that that happened with the space, because like there were walls that we knew that that's where that work goes, like made for it, like instantly. And then, but at the same time, once we put the works together, there's a meaning that appears in between, right? There's something that is created. If the work was alone by itself, wouldn't have the same impact. Like your sculptures, against the borderline for me, like the reference to war and armor, and like it's instant, like, and I think both works kind of makes that stronger. And your drawing, Chanika, it kind of it draws everybody in. Like there's no way you cannot see it, right? 18-foot drawing, and instead of overwhelming and suppressing the other works and making it is the contrary, kind of raises everything. So yeah, I think you do not you cannot see what you're gonna create without the space, like having everything occupying that space. I honestly was shocked with the how impactful it was once it was up. I knew it could be good, but really, it still shocks me when I walk in.
Yeah, I think I was surprised by the way the works connected to each other, because I think I was very aware of the media you each worked in. And then I saw that text was a common thread in all of our work, which surprised me, and how each work was embodied, and also how interactive the gallery was. So in some of my past work, I create work that specifically interacted with the public, but because of the pandemic, I couldn't do that. And it's always something I like to include. But because we were able to use the QR codes, and Jen, also your bird sounds, and Kat, your installation, and also just the way your hanging sculptures work, they interact with the public too. And so I love how interactive it is. And then we do, if you're able to visit, we do have an interactive element where you can share what resilience means to you. So I'm glad we're able to add that in the community gallery. And we really want this to be extended out, for it to have this ripple effect, that it's not just our experience and our art, but also about other people's experiences, and for them to be able to share their own experiences and open up that space for conversation and discussion. So I hope that can happen, that, that's the legacy. That's how the work lives on, is in people's memories and sharing their thoughts. So thank you.
Thank you, Chanika. I really love the element of legacy that you mentioned in memories and people sharing of an event being the legacy that you leave behind. I think as artists, like, our legacy is always what the audience remembers and how folks speak upon our work. And so that's really important. So if you all haven't had a chance, please use their hashtag Sutured Resilience on social media. Even if you take a small screenshot of the artist now and the spotlight and show that you attended this event, it will mean a lot. And that would add on to the legacy that Sutured Resilience leaves on social media and just throughout the artist space of the world. Any last questions or remarks from the artist or from Addison, from the audience?
I'll reserve my time for the very end to close this out. So if anybody else has any questions, feel free to ask them now.
You can also use the chat.
Well, if nobody else has any other questions, I just want to once again thank all three of you for taking the time today for this artist talk. Also, again, for thank you for thinking of artworks for this exhibition. I am delighted that we were able to bring this exhibition to Artworks. I really would love to see this show travel near and far. I think it's a very important show, and it really needs to be experienced by as many people as possible. And it will live on the Artworks website. It'll be in our archives once the show comes down. You just go to our website, click on Gallery Archive, and you'll be able to find it there. There'll be a full photo gallery. The virtual gallery will be there as long as it's still up and running on the interwebs. And as well as this artist talk. So the artist talk will be live as of Monday morning on our website, and links will also be posted on social media. So this talk will live on well after this exhibition's over, and hopefully, will be seen by many more people, and that this show actually travels. So thank you all for being here today. I will pass it on to Kenny now to give her closing remarks, and we'll wrap up for the day. So thank you all for being here.
I don't have too many more closing remarks. Just want to thank you all for sticking with us through the entire time. Thank you for being interactive. Thank you for your comments and questions to further along the artist talk. And thank you to the artist again for being vulnerable and welcoming in the space. Thank you all for sharing space, and have a wonderful rest of your weekends.
Thank you, Kenny, Addison, everyone, Artworks. We really enjoyed this time.
Everyone. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Kenny and Addison, Artworks.